The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar on computing, animation and history with me, Tim Wilson, as your host and our fantastic speaker, Richard Smith. A little bit about me. So I'm the Community Outreach Manager for CAS, and my area is the Midlands, and I'm responsible for the regional growth and delivery of CAS Communities of Practice as part of the National Centre for Computing Education. So this webinar is the latest in our CAS Inspire series, which is a series of resources consisting of live webinars with expert panelists, such as Richard, discussing topical computing education matters in which the audience can get involved. So CAS Inspire also features, as well as webinars, videos, podcasts, and careers inspiration webinars all around computing. So we have an action-packed webinar, and I'll introduce Richard in 1 minute. Just so you are aware, you are in listen-only mode. So all attendees, if you have questions or you have comments for Richard today, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen, not only to ask questions, but also to make comments. And Richard will be utilizing your comment skills throughout the session, as well as fielding your questions. And I'll be moderating your questions and we'll field them to Richard at various points throughout the session. Just so you are aware also, there is a copy of Richard's slides to download during this session, and these are available in the handout section. Finally, before I introduce Richard, if you are using social media, the hashtag for the event is CASInspire20, and Richard's handle on Twitter is AmazingICT, and my own handle is CAS Midlands. I will put these in the chat in a moment. So on to our speaker. Richard Smith has run his own company, Amazing ICT, for 10 years. He normally works in around 8 different schools a week, supporting students with both computing and e-safety. And at the moment, he's delivering lots of amazing remote lessons in 6 schools a week and providing training for student teachers. He also jointly runs the Telford CAS Mixed Community. And as you're about to find out, he loves the creative side of his job. And with that creativity in mind, I'm just going to hand you over to Richard. So, Richard, it's all yours.
Oh, it's great to see you all. I'm so pleased so many people have taken time to come and watch this. A little starter for you. I want you to think about why Richard's put 4 little onions down on top of a bit of paper there, and why that is significant. They're not just weight to weigh the paper down, they are significant. So just have a little think about that. And if you want to get involved, you can put your answer in the chat. So let's make a start, and we'll give you lots of good ideas. So I really think making things is vital, both with younger children, older children, and adults as well. So here we've got a family that are building something that we're going to use later. So just have a little think about what that might be. So obviously it's an old shoebox, bit of painting, bit of paper there. And I think in this present day where it's so easy to just view other people's content online, it's more and more important that families and individual students and teachers and TAs encourage young people to make things. So that's sort of a really important little phrase there. Create content rather than consume content. Because if you think of people getting jobs in the future, for example, they're not going to get a job for just watching stuff, but they might get a job that involves making a video or making an animation and then publishing it. So I want to just talk a little bit about the fact that movement is so important. If you think about telling a story, if you're just telling somebody a story, you tend to move your hands to accentuate certain key things. And this is a beautiful picture of some shadow puppets. And you can see that they are on little sticks and they'd be moved around. And the light would actually partly go through the sort of lacy materials. And obviously, as you move them towards the light, the image would get bigger. So you've got an idea of perspective there as well. So for us, in terms of today, we're going to be talking a lot about movement. So this is some of the things that I used to do when I was at school, was make little flip books. Now that one is very, very complicated. That one I've just got off the shared Wikipedia site. So if you want to do this, probably the best thing is to start with something simple like a ball that might start on the left of one piece of paper, and then you'd move it slightly to the right and perhaps down to be aware of gravity. And then when it got to the bottom, you might bounce it. And depending on how high it bounced, that relates to the properties of the ball. So you can actually do a little bit of science with that. So a simple flip book that you could make with your children or just to entertain yourselves this evening. So there are a number of definitions of animation online, and obviously they change with time. So this is quite a recent definition: the technique of photographing successive drawings or positions of puppets or models to create an illusion of movement when this film is shown as a sequence. So what I've done there is just to pull out on the right-hand side 7 important pieces of vocabulary, because I think as we teach computing to students, then it's important that they use the right terminology. So they might say photograph, or they might say capture or create a digital image. And remember that, as the thing on the other side says, we need a number of digital images to show movement. And a really nice word that links to science or maths is sequence. So a sequence of images, or a sequence of images to tell a story. We obviously need to save it and then load it next lesson. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. And then usually if we're using software on a computer or a tablet, we need to export it so it can be viewed and published. And then we need to talk to the children about what equipment they need. Sometimes you might refer to that as hardware, and then the opposite of that would be the software, which could include the program on the computer, or it could be an app on a tablet. And then also sharing, publishing. So that all links with the third strand, the sort of digital literacy strand of the computing curriculum, where we're talking about safely sharing. Just to make sure you're up to speed on that, as part of computing, you've got 3 strands. So the top one is the computer science, which would be sort of your coding, your debugging, your unplugged activities. The middle one is the information technology. So that's Excel or spreadsheets, sort of things like this, so different sort of presentations, but then it would also include things to do with animation. And then, as I say, the digital literacy would be the bottom one, which would include the safe sharing. So hopefully those 7 key vocabulary terms will be useful to you. Now, I've been doing this for 10 years, so a few helpful hints here. 5 stages of getting ready. Is it possible? Now, hopefully you're going to say yes. But often when you talk to children, they have unrealistic expectations. So it might be, if you're talking about an evacuation, they want people to get on a train, the train to move, get off a train, go to the family where they might be work in the fields as an evacuee. So, you know, that would take sort of weeks, maybe perhaps 40 hours. So it might be, especially based on the age of the children, that you say, that's a really great big idea. To start with, let's just focus on 3 people getting off a train, or 3 people with suitcases getting on a train. Number 2, consider whether to do a 2D animation or a 3D animation. So a 2D animation would be based on a flat piece of paper, and a 3D animation would involve some sort of model that you might make out of plasticine, or it could involve something with things that move, so like Lego figures. Do some historical research. I think this is vital. Sometimes people will start their animation and then at the end they'll sort of think, oh, it could have been so much better. So, you know, look at pictures. So this is like a Tudor house, and think about what are the features of that. So in this case, the top floor comes out above the bottom floor. And it's made out of, it looks to me like wood, and you could consider what the roof's made out of. So do some historical research, and please use more than one source. So don't just let them go on a particular website. And so that links in with the third strand. So talking about, you know, the validity of information, especially historical information. Decide on a time allocation. So I'm going to, as I talk about them, I'm going to tell you roughly how long it would take. So I did one last week with some year threes, and they had an hour. So I had to fit it into an hour, and that included cutting a few things up and then exporting the movies at the end. So you've got to decide what time allocation you want. And then obviously you've got to set up the equipment, the materials, and check the software is available and on your devices. So the example I'm going to start you with is the one I did with year three last week. Now this was, the school had got some iPads and they wanted to test whether it worked before they bought any software. So they used something called To Animate Lite. And that's a free app that you can download for Android and for Apple. And I did it, we were talking about food groups, and they were cutting up items from different food groups and they were moving them towards the plate. Now, if we were going to do a historical one of these, you could talk about what food was eaten during that period of time. And you might talk to them about, would they have had knives and forks in that period of time? So at the bottom, you can see at the very top, you've got like a word moving in, and that was just 6 pictures that I've just done as an example. So just to clarify, you need to think of an idea and then try and relate that to the history. So in this case, it would be what food did they eat in a particular period of history. And in a minute, you're going to see a video of actually how I set it up. So what I would suggest you do is to think about the term animation station. Now, this was provided by me by a student I was working with, and they said, why don't you call it an animation station? I've just been calling it a table with some stuff on, like books and a... But I like that phrase, and I'm sure you could make a label and put a table in the corner of the room and have that. So let's just think of what we need. So in this case, we've got to balance the iPad or the tablet. We need some books to lean it against, and you could get a holder. Now, you can actually buy holders, but this is just a little one that I got from an old table, and the iPad will actually... If you take it out of the case, it'll slot into there. And this is really heavy, so it means it won't fall over. Notice in the background, I put a template of a picture that I drew, just to give the children a bit of an idea. Now, that template could be drawn by you, or it could be drawn by a student. It would be really nice if it was drawn by a student, because then they're involved in the preparation of the animation. So what I'm going to ask Tim to do is to put a little video in the chat now, and I'd like you to watch how I set it up. And then when the video is finished, just pause it and then come back to this screen, please.
Cool, I have shared the video.
So once you've watched the video, just pause it and then put any questions you've got in the chat, and then Tim will ask me any questions. I forgot to say that you can see the hand drawing behind the iPad in the distance. So it's just balanced against the books, so you can see the template in the distance.
Cool. If anyone has any questions for Richard, please use the questions tab. And there aren't any questions at the moment, Richard. So if you want to continue, please do so.
I will, yeah. So I think if I just recap what we talked about so far, the fact that there's 3 strands in the computing curriculum, and this sort of creative process tends to be within the information technology strand. However, it does overlap to some of the terminology of the computer science strand, and also when you're talking about sharing in terms of e-safety, then it links the digital literacy strand as well. So let me just talk about how this could be done, and I am going to just refer to the sort of restrictions at the moment. So what would happen normally is you would have the original picture that the children had taken it in turns to come up and draw a little bit of. Now, if this is too complicated, what you can do is one of the children who are really good at art, or a group of children, can create this, and then you can photocopy it. So this is your master copy, and then you're giving the children one of these. This will be sellotaped to the desk, and then the children are coming up and adding a little bit each. Now on the slide you can see there's a choice for you. Once you've set up your animation station, people can work individually. Now if you're working individually, you have to do the drawing with the pens, and then you have to press the button to capture the image. So often people prefer, teachers and TAs tend to put children in pairs to do this. They might do 5 minutes of the drawing and then swap, so the other person has 5 minutes of the drawing, the other person's capturing the image. The other way, of course, which is a problem at the moment, is, as I say, you might have a group doing it. So imagine you've got 10 children, you wanted to do this with a group. You'd have a little rota, so they might have 2 minutes doing the fire at a time. So then you've got a group work. Now the advantage of that in normal time is you can put the animation station in the corner of a room and you can set it up so it can be just one activity within other activities to do with history. I'm just going to show you a little one that I just did. Now, if you're using I Can Animate Lite, you only get 240 frames. So the one I did in the video you've just watched was a lot more than that. It was 900 frames. But in a way, that's quite good because it gives the children a limit, so that then they've got sort of they know that they've got to tell the story within 240 frames. So when I click on this, you can see I can scroll across and you can see the frames I've taken so far. So I've pressed the red button, and then I've actually just drawn a few more of the flames in, and then I can press play, and then you can see it. Now on the light version, you can't change the frames per second. I don't know if you can see that, Tim, but it probably says 12 frames per second. Now that's fine for when children are practicing, but if you buy the app, then obviously you can change the settings, the frames per second. So I'm going to do a little bit of theory now. Now, this is my favourite bit of the presentation because I'd never done this before. And what I did was to get a few... I wondered why it was called onion skinning. So I got a few bits of onion skin, tried not to cry during the cutting up. And hopefully you can see that those are translucent. So the top layer has got a dot on, and then the next layer back has got a dot, and then the next layer back to the bottom layer. So actually you can see through more than one layer. And this is where the terminology onion skinning comes from. And basically it just represents the fact that you can see the previous image to guide you so that you can make a very professional animation. And if you look on the left hand side, this is just somebody that's drawing an image based on the previous one. So hopefully you can see a previous image that's behind there. And I think they're animating a leopard. So you can imagine how long that would take. So they do the new version and then they would take a picture of that. Now this is interesting because if you look at this has been done on Purple Mash, which is a subscription service. They use the icon of the onion, so it's really nice to be able to tell the children about that and show them that. And that's really, to me, that's really important, because if you're going to get into this animation process, then it's great to know a little bit of the history of it. Now, there is a live link for you to try there, so if you could paste that into the chat, please, Tim. And there's a QR code, so if you've got a phone, you could scan it. And the background was supplied, it's within To Simple. So it's within To Animate. So I didn't have to draw that, that was provided. And I just loaded it from the center icon, which has got a picture of two mountains on. So if you could just try that, and Tim, if you could just confirm that works. And then once again, if you would like to ask any questions, just put them into the chat.
Yep, I have some questions and that link works fine. I've just posted it into the chat as well. Yes, a couple of questions. Firstly, going back to your animation station. Question from, yep. Do the children take one or more pics at each drawing? Also, how do you not see their hands?
Great questions. If you want the animation to last for longer, you can tell them to press the record button, the capture button 4 times, and then you'll have 4 of the same thing. Now that would be ideal for the light version, but don't forget you're then only going to have to be able to have 4 into 240 goes 60, so you're going to have 60 different positions for the colouring or the drawing. So to make it last longer, you can do that. However, if you like it and you buy the app, I think it's $2.99, you would just take it once and then you would slow the frames per second down. So that's how you would make it last longer. I'm just going to show you in real time how to get rid of your hands. So if I just, it's a little bit tricky, but if imagine I've got my hand in it. Let me just put this pen to represent my hand. I'll just take a picture. I'll tell you what, I'll take a picture of my hand in it. So you can see my hand there. Now I don't want this, so you click on it and there's a bin and you click on that, and that would be one of the skills you would teach the children. You'd say you're likely to make some mistakes. If you make mistakes, get rid of the mistake at the time. So you could have a third person in the group who's like the director and is just checking that the picture doesn't move on the table and that there's no hands in it. So that would be a really nice role to have the director just keeping an eye on things.
Great answer. Thank you. One more question. One of our attendees uses Stickbot and has asked, do you know how many frames, I assume frames per second, you can have with Stickbot?
I've got the app here. For those people that don't know Stickbot, it's here. A great little pocket filler for Christmas. I think they're about £4, and I usually suggest so the children don't get frustrated, choose something that the little suckers will stick to. So in this case, it's a plate. So if they're practicing, don't do it on a wooden table. Do it on something that's plastic, or in this case, a plate. You can hear it actually coming off. So it fell over because I haven't got the plate flat. So I'm putting that on there. I would take an image and then I would hold this down, and then I'd move one of the arms or the legs. Now, if it falls over, it doesn't matter. That's what's wonderful, because that's what the onion skin's for, because then all you've got to do is put the character back in the same position that it was the last position. And if you didn't have the onion skin, it would be very, very frustrating for the children. So the onion skin is a lifesaver to stop children getting frustrated. I haven't played with because I've only just bought the Stickbot just to show you. Once you get the Stickbot, the app is free. And I think you can just to start with, it's 12 frames, but I'm sure you can add more. So I just did an example earlier with 12 frames. The nice thing about this is you do get some little tutorials. So you could just create a simple movie. So that would be the first one that I would watch. So I would suggest, just for a minute, just leaving the history aside, you could have a Stickbot, a tablet, an Android or an iPad, and then you just let a couple of children explore the sort of techniques of animation in terms of the onion skinning and moving a little bit at a time. That's the one thing that the younger children struggle with. They'll sort of push it like, 3 centimeters instead of just saying, well, actually, it needs to be 2 millimeters. And it can be very fiddly for some of the younger children. I have, in fact, done it with reception children. And if we got time, I'll tell you later how I actually did a project with reception children.
Great.
Any more questions?
Yeah, just one more. Please, can you please repost the name of the app you've used for the animation of Pudding Lane? That's I Can Animate, isn't it? Is that right?
Yes. An interesting point while we're on that is that is owned by Cudlian, and they came out with another one called Animate It, and it's exactly the same, but it was just created for a special movie. So Animate It and I Can Animate are the same, but I Can Animate Lite is the free one.
That's everything for now, Richard.
Now this, I'm glad to say, I was inspired by a year 5 at Meadows Primary. So a special shout out for Meadows Primary. I did some work there about coding, and there was this student who had Flipper Clip on one of the school iPads, and I think Andrew Denton, who leads computing there, had installed it. And this boy did some incredible animations, so I was inspired to have a little go. And I'm afraid mine isn't as good as the year 5 student, but I've had a little go, and I just want you to watch that. So if you could post that in the chat, and then I'm just going to tell you a few things about Flipper Clip, and then you can have a look at it. It's free, so it's brilliant. So if you could just put that into the chat, Tim.
Yep, I've done.
I do think it's wonderful when you're inspired by young people. It's just gives me loads of energy to think that they've inspired me to actually learn something new. And it's an important point, I think, with technology, that we can't expect to know everything ourselves. So often people will show us stuff and we need to say thank you, well done, and almost repurpose it. So well done to that young person. Right, so basically, I'm just going to hold this up here. This is wonderful because what it allows you to do is it allows you to create a digital animation with a free app, just using pens, not physical pens, but pens that are on the app. So what I did was I took a picture of the template, and then what I did next was to choose what pen I wanted. Now there are 4 pens to choose from, so the 4 pens are down the bottom. Now if you look at the slide that I've put, you'll see there's some very fine bits, and those are using the little liner pen that you might have used in geography at school perhaps. And then the thicker bits are either with the crayon or with the sort of flat brush. Now, I didn't use the highlighter, so tell the children they don't have to use all the techniques. But can you see on the picture, there's some sort of, you can see sharp bits at the ends of the red flames. So what you would do, I'll just do a little bit of, if I can hold it up here, I'm going to go across to the end, and I'm going to add a new, I'm going to rest my finger on the last, I'm going to rest my finger on the last image, and I'm going to copy it. I clicked on the copy, and then I'm going to paste it as a new image. And then what I can do is get the pen that I want. I'll use this crayon one, and then I can choose my color. Now, to save time, I've created 5 default colors at the bottom, so you can just go to plus, and these are all the colors I'm using. So if I want to choose, if I want red, I haven't got to select a red, it's now the red, default red, and I can just go straight to the picture. I'll just do a little bit up here where there's white so you can see it. Can you see that, Tim?
Yes, I can.
And then you can even on this zoom in. So I was quite pleased myself because I started to do a few flames near the roof, the top of the roof. So the thing is, you can zoom in, and then you can still use, let me zoom right in, then you can still use the same pen, hopefully. Can you see a little bit of red coming out the top there? So Flipper Clip is brilliant, and I would recommend it for home use for schools. But obviously, if you're in a school, you've got to get the technician to install it. But it is free, and there's no adverts on it. So that was great, because sometimes you'll install stuff and then regret it because there's loads of adverts. So any questions about Flipper Clip, put them in the chat. We're now going on to 3D animation. Now, in one of my slides, I talked about time constraints. So this takes a lot longer, as you might expect. For a start, the teacher set for a homework, I think it was like a 3-week homework, make a Stone Age background with your children. So this I had to take a picture of this because it was brilliant. So you can see they've used an old shoebox. Out of interest, can you see that I've put my iPad in two of those wooden holders that I showed you earlier? So you don't need to necessarily buy expensive iPad or tablet holders. You can actually just make something like that. Looking from the top, you can see you've even got a pile of sticks there. And then you would introduce your characters. Now this was a group of, I think it was 5 children. So they got Lego figures and they made some beards and hairstyles, and they even got a skeleton out of the Lego pack, and they even made a sort of animal skin rug there. Now, I think this is wonderful because when children are making stuff, they're discussing that period of history. So, you know, there's nobody there with a TV, or there's nobody there, you know, with a phone. So automatically they are discussing what might be appropriate in that period of history. And that school was Muxton School, so massive thank you to them. And the next one just shows us actually making it. Now we just had the light version there. Can you see that there's only 240 frames available? So the children did have to tell quite a short story. This one, you can see all the books there. So that's not the holder, that's using books. And obviously dictionaries and thesauruses are brilliant because they're heavy and they can be stacked. And this one, you can see they've got a nice sort of sky scheme theme. They got some mountains and they got some animal skins drying on some rocks. You can just see in the image on the iPad, and you can see that they've taken 112 pictures. And that link, that's a live link. Could you just copy that to the chat? That takes you to the school. Thanks, Tim. That takes you to the school web page that shows you what the homework was. And just have a little think about what you could do with your students using those sort of techniques, either 2D or 3D, and any questions put in the chat.
No questions, but lots of comments. A lot of love for what you're showing in terms of just the simplicity and effectiveness of it, showing how the practical application of these apps, especially when you were using the iPad for Flipper Clip. And another attendee has pointed out, you know, that their year 2 are doing the Great Fire of London as well for the app. So it's good,
brilliant,
good historical event in which to put these things into practice.
Okay, I'm going to do a little bit on linking up ideas now, because I know some people will really want to push this to the extreme. So green screen, we tend to call it green screen. In Hollywood, they're using blue screens at the moment. Basically, it's a screen that doesn't include skin tone. So unless you're a Smurf, blue is okay. Green is okay. Unless you're a sort of Superman type character that's all green, because then you'll be invisible. But there's such creative stuff that you can do with the green screen. The proper name is chroma key. That's what they call it in Hollywood, because chroma is sort of color, and then key would mean you were keying out the green tone or the blue tone. And this is a massive shout out for Grange Park Primary, and they've done some different houses, and then we took pictures against the green screen, and then took a picture of the children against the green screen, and then we just superimposed them. And I tell you, I mean, I work with probably 10,000 children over maybe 3 years, and the children's faces when they were stood outside their Tudor house was wonderful. I use Do Ink app, and that's a paid app. However, I must say that the paid apps, in a way, for a start, you've got to pay the person who develops them, so that's good because they've developed a great app. But also, you get no adverts, you get no unfortunate pop-ups, you don't get it pausing because it's properly designed by proper software designers. So Do Ink app is the best one that I've ever used, and I use it all the time. So the reason I said linking up activities was this is a 3D animation using green screen in the background. So this was for an RAC competition that I did for Homer Lake Primary, and I think we came second or third, but the school won £1,000. So there's often prizes and competitions in terms of animation, because that people know that if they can get somebody to do something, they can put it on their website. So often companies or charities will say, animation competition, why don't you get your students to enter? So it's worth keeping an eye open on social media for competitions. This isn't a history example, it was for the RAC, so it's a safeguarding children on the road example. Could you just put the link in the chat, please?
Yep, will do.
And the children had to think of their own jingle as well. So that was really good. So we had to record the sound using Audacity and then integrate it all together. So just to recap, the models are either made out of plasticine or physical models of cars, but the background is a green screen behind the model, behind the animation station, and then we could put whatever background we want. So that's a background of the street opposite the school. Any questions about that, Tim?
Cool. We just having a look through now. There's one question related to the Great Fire example. Would you suggest, this is a question for you, would you suggest that children do a voiceover to explain the stories?
Brilliant. Yeah, there's an example at the very end. There's a link from a school called Western Ryn in Shropshire, and they've done a voiceover. Just let me talk about the theory of that, if I may. So when you export, let me just go back to the main screen. I'll have to hold it, but I'll have to point to this. There's an up arrow. So when the children have done their work, they've got to export it. So that's why the word export is key, and it should say export movie. Now, when the paid version, you can have 4 choices of definition, but in this free version, you're only allowed 2, but that's fine. I'm just going to choose 480 and then it's exporting it to the camera roll. I'll just do that again. Oh, it says it's done it. And then I would import that to some sort of movie making software, such as Movie Maker. In terms of the iPad, I would use iMovie. I'm just going to try and import it to show you. Give me a second. So I've loaded iMovie. I'm clicking on here, and then I click on the plus. And then it will put it, sorry, just let me tick it again. Yeah, tick it. Now I can actually do more than one movie at once. So I could do that one and a different one. Go to plus, and then it will put them both into iMovie. And then this is where I could do my voiceover. So there's a little microphone there. Can you see? It's ready for me to record.
I should point out that for those of you who are finding what Richard's demonstrating quite small, it is actually really simple to, as someone who does a lot of video editing, it is really simple to export the video and then add audio over the top of it in iMovie or Windows Movie Maker, especially things like iMovie. They're so, yeah, it's so straightforward. So I appreciate that not everyone can see it fully. But,
yeah. And if you've got Android tablets, there will be some software for Android as well. Okay, now here's some ideas. Now this is your chance now to really impress Tim with your ideas. So I'm going to go through 12 ideas, and I asked some student teachers. I was working with 2 groups, so there were probably 30 teachers overall, student teachers, and I asked them for some ideas because I told them I was working with you today. So any ideas linked to Great Fire of London, Guy Fawkes, or the Vikings, just put them in the chat if you've got any ideas. But you could argue that some of your ideas might already be there. So don't feel you've got to, but it would be lovely if you can put them in the chat, and then Tim can capture those, and then he can tweet them out, or he can just give them to me, and then I can add them to this presentation.
We have a baker's shop.
Brilliant. A little baker's shop would be wonderful.
I like that.
Now, I love it when children just get cardboard and build stuff. And I do think, if you think of this baker's shop here, the fact that the top floor is bigger than the bottom floor is quite an interesting part of history. And I think that's called a jetty. So, you know, getting children to build stuff and then use some plasticine figures to move them around in front would be wonderful.
We have Vikings rowing their longboat. Samuel Pepys also suggested.
Oh, yes. I should have thought of Samuel Pepys. Yeah, so you could do an animated diary. Yes, an animated diary. So you could have a piece of paper, and then the children could have an old quill from an old feather, and then the words could be appearing in real time. Not in real time, in recorded time. And then you could make the paper look old-fashioned by using tea on it. And then you could even animate the tea soaking into the paper to make it look old. So loads of stuff there. Right next to World War I and II and the Greeks. Any ideas? We've got loads of ideas there, so... Tim, there's a little thing that says research. Could you just paste that into the chat?
Yep.
We talked about research earlier, and this will allow your children to do some really good research. It's a YouTube channel from a company that makes stuff to do with virtual reality, but they provided some very clever look arounds on YouTube. So if you click on that, you should get a YouTube channel, and you should be able to look around an Anderson shelter just on your screen by using the mouse, or if you've got a tablet, by using your finger. So that could be used by individuals when they're doing research, or it could be used in the classroom when you're preparing for your animation project. Right, if we could go on to the next two, Egyptians and Mayans. So we got some ideas there. If you can think of any others, please put them into the chat.
We're getting a steady stream of fabulous suggestions. We've got evacuation on a train, planes bombing, private peaceful church. Talk of contrasts there, from planes bombing to private peaceful church. Research using cafe news, which I really think is great. I think that's great.
Wonderful, yeah. So for those people that don't know Pathé News, it's copyright-free stuff, but based on the fact it's very old. But you can actually find some original sort of film clips, really, and they're copyright-free, I believe, Tim. You might just need to check that copyright-free thing. I thought they were, but it might just be worth people here today checking on that. It is vital. For example, let me tell you about this. I could not use this in my as my background because it's somebody's house that they've designed, and if I put that on YouTube, I'm using their I'm sort of breaking copyright. So that's why I had to design my own. So it's vital that children understand about copyright when they're putting stuff online. Last one, space exploration, Tudors, Victorians and Romans. So your opportunity there to just have a little, put some ideas in about those 5. I mean, I tend to get the children to come up with lots of ideas. A bit like I talked about the flipper clip. If the children can come up with brilliant ideas, that's much better than you suggesting, 10 ideas. Get them to do some research at home and then come in and feed the ideas in. But you do have to, as I said in the very early slide, you've got to make sure they understand it's got to be realistic. So just if we talk about the evacuation, it might be 3 people getting onto a train, not 3 people getting onto the train, moving, and then 16 people getting off. So they've got to understand it's got to be doable.
Yeah, so just a few more examples, Richard. Got the examples including Cleopatra arriving down the Nile, opening the tomb and seeing all the treasures. Henry VIII face talking. So a mouth animation. So he's talking about his 6 wives. That's quite good.
Yeah, that you might need to share some research about mouth animation. You can take a picture. Imagine this was Henry VIII. You could take a picture and then you can actually use your voice and make his lips move. But I'm afraid I've never done that. But you can do that, and there's a number of free apps that you can do that with. Absolutely.
And just 2 quick. Chatterpix is recommended here, which I think is a good.
Thank you, Chatterpix. That's the one. That's great. Again, check for adverts as well on things.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 quick questions. How long did the green screen video you showcased take to put together?
It took a long time because we knew it was for a competition. The nice thing was there were a number of groups involved. So there was one group who set up all the background and chose the background. So it probably took 20 hours.
Quite an intensive piece of work.
But you know, it's quite important. That's a great question, because you know, it's no use children seeing that and think they can do it in 20 minutes. So and often if you think of some of the films that they might watch on television, you might have 500 animators working on that for 6 months. So that's important.
And one final question before you move on to the next bit. Can you export things from Too Simple and put them in iMovie?
I don't think you can, but it might be worth just tweeting Too Simple and asking that. We do use Twitter quite a lot for finding things out that we don't know. So if you haven't got a Twitter account, I would recommend that you use it. And on a Tuesday night, we have something called Kaz Chat. And I'm actually doing the Kaz Chat tonight, and it's about music, creativity and music. And it's from 8 to 9 every Tuesday, and volunteers run it every Tuesday. So I might see you later if you want to know a little bit about music. Right, we're going to move on to Scratch now, and I'm aware that the time is getting short. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. This came out from a school wanting to talk about industrial vehicles. So if you click on that link, if you put that link in the chat, you should get an industrial vehicle that appears, and you should be able to change the speed of the wheels. So I was trying to show the children that it links with D&T and science as well. So you can change the speed to whatever you want. So you could even use a decimal, so 0.5 or 0.1. I haven't even tried. You might try a minus number, see what happens there. I've never tried that. And then underneath is my Scratch channel, which has got 1,000 projects on. So you could put that in the chat as well, Tim. So we'll just give people just a minute to have a look at those two links. On my Scratch work, if I just show you very briefly while people are trying it out, there is one that I've done with my son, and it uses copyright. We've created some copyright-free characters for Vikings, because when I was doing that with children in schools, you can't just steal other people's drawings. So these have got copyright-free. My son and I are happy for you to use that. So there's 4 copyright-free characters there, and there's a boat as well. So you could actually just you could create an animation with the boat moving across the sea to Lindisfarne, as we talked about earlier. I wanted you to know, and apologies if you know this already, that you can add more frames to each character that exists. So if you think of the Scratch cat, it's only got two positions. But if you right-click and duplicate it, you can get a copy of the second cat. And then because it's a vector drawing, you can actually move the leg. So it's a really nice thing to think that all the Scratch characters you can actually change and develop. But you must don't let them be on bitmap. You have to click on here so they're vector. It's only when they're vector that you can change the angle and the size. A bitmap is just the individual pixelated images, so you can't change those. All you can do on the bitmaps is color them in. You can't move them. And there's a little video for you to watch just to see how to animate a bitmap on a cat. So if you want to put that in the chat, Tim, thank you very much. this week I've been doing a robotics week in a school, and I just thought it would be nice for you to see that you can actually animate in Scratch. Now, clearly, it's very, not Scratch, Microbit. Clearly, it's very limited because you've only got 25 lights that come on. However, if I press this, hopefully, you'll see a rocket take off. Did it take off, Tim?
It's just about to take off. There we go. It was like a long count.
Okay. Now, children love it, but I just wanted you to see that that was an option for animation. But obviously, you cannot make like the Bayer tapestry and expect it to be very detailed because you've only got 25 frames. However, this is really, really nice. You can create a big image which has got twice as many frames, and then you can make it scroll across. So you could have something moving across the screen. And if you copy and paste that into the chat, it'll take you to a help page from Microbit to show you how to do that. This is a resource that Adam and Kelly from I Learn To have let you have. It's a whole animation pack for year 4. And the link is there. Now, a bit like Purple Mash, it's a subscription site, but it's a brilliant site, and they've given you the whole of that unit free. So a massive thank you to them for giving you that. And if you want some ideas to get you started, if you've enjoyed today, that would be a great place to start. Final slide. So just a few more things that I found useful. So Zoo 3D is a very, very good company for animation software. They do apps, they do software that will go on your PC. And this is where the examples were for the Fire of London from Western Rin, from the school there. Now, we haven't got time for you to look at them all now, but that's for you to look at afterwards. Hue make cameras, and they're brilliant as visualizers, and I've used those for animations as well. And they've got some software that goes with it called Animation Studio. I'm not sure the exact cost. You'll have to have a little look, but it would be quite good to buy a camera and buy the Animation Studio as well. Cuddlian, the software people that do I Can Animate, also have got a pack. I put a link further back, and they provide you with cameras and the software to go with it. There's a nice little clip on BBC Bite Size about animation. There's somebody called Martin who I recommend, who's called Animate to Educate. He does loads on Twitter. He's a great guy, and he does some really creative work. So that's a link to some of his animations, linked to the Blitz. So somebody was talking about World War II there. And then the last one is from me. This page just gives you 12 ideas. So animation is just one of them. So it gives you animation ideas, but another 11. And they're all on one page to help you. So without further ado, I'm just going to see if there's any final questions. And then I'm just going to say good night to you or good evening to you and give you my details, which are there. So any questions, Tim?
Lots of great comments, lots of positive feedback. A lot of love for I Learn To. I think, yeah, I think it's worth the small amount of the minimal subscription. If you have that subscription, I think it's worth it. I've seen it in action. I think the resources are really cool. So I second that. Someone's mentioned the Piscal app, you know, for the pixels and things. I think I've seen you use that, haven't I? Is that right? Or is it?
Yeah, we used it for the. Yeah, I've done that. We just didn't have time for it today because I was aware of the time. But you can draw those animations. The Viking ones were done using that sort of software, and you can animate them as well. Adam and Kelly talk about how to animate a fish on that web page that I've given you there. So that's a great start. So they just start by animating a fish that you could do with year 1. I promised to tell you how I did it with reception. I balanced the iPad on a table with some weights, and then we put a big piece of sugar paper underneath, and the children were moving objects around like fruit, and then we were taking pictures, and they all had a little go at moving the items. So that's how to do it with very, very young children, just them working on the floor and you balancing this on a table.
Brilliant.
So thank you from me. I will be back next Tuesday. I think Tim's going to give you some more details. There's my email, there's my website, there's my Twitter handle. So I'll either see you tonight at the Kaz Chat at 8, talking about creativity in music, or hopefully see you next Tuesday talking about geography and journeys, and Tim's going to just give you a few more details. So thanks for joining me today.
First of all, a massive thank you to Richard. As always, I'm always very inspired by Richard's events because they're always filled with lots of practical tips and tricks. And the thing I always take from them is all of this stuff is relatively, if not pretty simple to do. Obviously some of the big projects require planning, require hours, but there's a lot of things you can just get stuck into and use and get active in there, and they're fun just on their own right. Just as a teacher, it's lovely just being able to have this time to be able to have fun with them, and embrace them. And this whole Kaz Inspire a series this term has been about cross-curriculum computing and inspiring those teachers who perhaps are not so confident using computers in other subject areas. So I hope that you have been inspired to utilize animation, maybe not just in history, but in other uses as well. So I'm hoping that's come across in the session today. I certainly think so, and certainly by the comments that you're all sending in the chat and the questions, that's coming across. So Richard, you're getting a lot of appreciation here. So I will share these.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I've just posted the link to next week's session. So next week's session is on computing and geography. So this is about how to use technology to enhance your geography lessons. So creating digital journeys across countries, across the local area, and again, using free and affordable software. So if you like today's fact-filled practical demonstration, you're going to love next week's session. So please do come along. It's same time next Tuesday at 4. For those of you who have asked, I will, if you've signed up to the event today through the Computing at School website, I will share the slides with you if some of you haven't been able to access the slides in the handout. So you'll get those useful links from the chat window in the slides. Other than that, that's it for today. Join us for Kaz Chat at 8 p.m. if you're on Twitter. Use the hashtag KazChat. If not, see you at a Kaz event between now and next Tuesday. And if not that, see you next Tuesday for the final Kaz Inspire session of the autumn. So thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cup of tea. How did you know?